Hello, welcome back to Mental Health with Todd. Today I will talk about Asperger syndrome, but before I jump into that, I want to inform on something else. As I continue talking about illnesses, there's something important I want to tell you. Mental illnesses can be mild or severe. Yes, we know that. But the important thing to know is for this reason, we know there are a number of different variations of the conditions, so we can never know the exact ramifications of one person's struggles, even if we are familiar with their condition. Now that that's out of the way, we will begin our discussion on Asperger syndrome. Asperger syndrome is a condition that creates problems for communication and social behavior. It is a mild form of autism. One problem people with Asperger's face is having a hard time understanding the giving and taking process of a conversation. This means that they could have difficulty finding a balance of talking and listening. They may talk too much, or they may listen too much in conversation. The people who suffer from Asperger's may also experience stereotyped repetitive motor mannerisms, such as twisting or flapping hands. If you do not know what that is, it's excessive or abnormal repetition of action that is carried out. People with this condition may also take things literally and be unable to comprehend the implied meanings. That means you could say one thing and they may think you mean something entirely different. Other things someone with Asperger's might struggle with are having inappropriate emotional or social responses. They might have extreme difficulties with reading, and it could be challenging for them to interpret social cues. Another difficult struggle is that people with this condition could have a hard time with understanding what others are feeling. Based on my research, I have found that the best way to describe autism and Asperger's syndrome is as living in an alternate dimension. It is from my understanding that they see things in a way that isn't necessarily wrong, but doesn't match the default perspective of someone without the condition. It is my belief that people with autism are precious and different. They have unique qualities such as superior memory and the ability to learn how to read at an early age. There's one more unique quality that is good and bad. People with Asperger's experience hypersensitivity to loud noises. They also experience hypersensitivity to things like environment, food textures, clothing, and odors. On one end, this makes the individuals more aware, but on the other hand, it makes them heavily distracted too. People with Asperger's may also face difficulty judging a person's personal space, and they might be very clumsy. They might also find it difficult to communicate non-verbally and could have different things involved in the way they talk. These things could be having robotic or repetitive speech, or sounding really formal all the time. One other thing about people with Asperger's is they may have an obsession with a specific topic, such as dinosaurs. There are just a few more things I want to talk about. People with this condition can blend in crowds of people without the condition. This means if you were to have a crowd with people without the condition and a person with the condition, you would not be able to find them because they wouldn't stick out for any reason. And talking about mental illness in general, just because there are people that can get meaningful jobs and live independently with conditions does not mean that all people can. And Furthermore, about Asperger's, the behavior in someone with Asperger's being altered will not cure the condition. Did you know that Dan Aykroyd had Asperger's syndrome? Well, one of his symptoms actually included the obsession with ghosts and law enforcement. As a result, the idea of his film Ghostbusters was born. He was an actor and writer, involved in the creation of Ghostbusters. Here's another fun and interesting fact about Asperger's syndrome. People with Asperger's syndrome may have found connections to certain TV characters in some way. If you look enough on the web, you'll find that fans of TV shows make connections from themselves to TV characters. There are many theories that certain characters are intended to be glorified portrayals of people with the Asperger's condition. Among them you will find charismatic people such as Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory or Moss from the IT Crowd. We've talked about movies, we've talked about TV shows. Now let's talk about music. There's a song called Solitary Shell by Dream Theater. Now, it isn't confirmed whether it relates to Asperger's syndrome, but there are many people that are coming up and saying that they can connect with the song through their condition. I say it's worth checking out, and I did listen to it. It's pretty catchy. On July 22nd, 2017, I asked a series of questions to someone who deals with the condition of Asperger's. The person preferred to go by the name of Jess. The first question I asked Jess was, as someone who deals with this condition, what is one thing you wish people could be more aware of that relates to it? Jess responded, I wish people would understand that autism is different for everyone and looks different on everyone. Of course, there are the baseline symptoms, but I've literally told someone I was autistic, and their answer was, are you sure? You don't seem autistic to me. It was a hard thing to talk about to begin with due to the stigma, and then to have someone deny a huge part of my identity really hurt. The next question I asked was, what are some positives about Asperger's syndrome? Jess responded, for me personally, I'm very tuned in to others' emotions. I've always been considered too sensitive, but I don't see that as a bad thing. I enjoy being an empath and being able to be there for people. I have a high sense of justice and fairness. I don't know who I would be if I didn't have such a caring personality, because it's so much of who I am. There's this strange stigma that people with autism don't feel for others or some shit, and that just blows my mind because literally all I do is care about others. It might be hard for me to express it sometimes because I'm so intense or overwhelmed, but it's there. I then proceeded to ask Jess, do you have any advice for people with Asperger's syndrome? She said, stick up for yourself, love yourself, live unapologetically. You are not a burden. My final question was, in your opinion, what about autism is most exciting or interesting? Her response was, I would say the most exciting part is making friends within the community. It opens your eyes as to how different autism is for everyone. There are people I've looked up to my entire life, and I'm just now finding out they also have autism. This helps me love and accept myself. That concluded the collection of questions I asked Jess. Now it's time for a pop quiz to see what you've learned. We'll We'll go through each letter of the word Asperger's. A. All people with Asperger's have a hard time understanding what others feel. True or false? If you answered false, you were correct. As discussed, we know that people like Jess can understand a lot about what others feel. We also know that just because something is a symptom doesn't mean that there are not variations of that condition where a person does not experience it. S. Social behavior can be negatively impacted by Asperger's syndrome. True or false? If you answered true, you were correct. P. People with Asperger's may be negatively impacted in relation to communication. True or false? If you answered true, you were correct. E. Experiencing stereotyped repetitive motor mannerisms is always a symptom in people with Asperger's syndrome. True or false? False. Touching back to what had been said previously, you don't necessarily experience every symptom that can be present in Asperger's when you deal with the condition. R. Reading can be extremely difficult for people with Asperger's syndrome. True or false? The answer was true. G. Giving and taking involved in conversation may be tough to balance for someone dealing with Asperger's syndrome. True or false? The answer was true. E. Experiencing hypersensitivity with Asperger's syndrome can be very distracting. True or false? If you guessed true, you were correct. R. Repetitive speech is not a symptom of Asperger's syndrome. True or false? False. Repetitive, robotic, and formal speech can all be symptoms a person with Asperger's syndrome face. S. Seeing this video, you now know everything there is to know about Asperger's syndrome. True or false? The answer is, of course, false. The actual truth is that even the professionals still are learning about mental conditions such as this. There's so much more information about Asperger's out there, you just need to know where to look. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Have a beautiful day.